Okay. Very good. Thank you. Interesting how many IT specialists are there. Some kind of karma working, you know, because I felt I needed to do some brain exercise, so I started studying a little bit of coding recently. So some kind of karma at work. Buddha said that people are coming together, you know, or associate based on their common inclinations, you know. So we can see that here. Anyway, so my purpose, my goal here is to teach you a few useful tricks and means for meditation and generally for Dhamma practice. Many of you already have some experience with meditation. About 2 or 3 of you, that's what I saw on these applications. Some, I think 2 or 3 are like beginning with meditation, so I have to adjust to that as well. But generally, you will probably hear quite a few things that you have already heard before, you know, so it will be like repetition. But repetition is useful and important. I actually repeat some things to myself again and again because I know how stupid my mind used to be and maybe still is, and it keeps doing same unwise things even without me noticing at first. So, for example, I understood quite a few years ago that what I am doing outside of formal meditation is at least as important as formal meditation. You know, so it doesn't matter for me. I believe generally for anyone whether you are practicing lots of formal meditation or whether you are just trying to maintain presence outside during daily activities. But still, from time to time, I catch myself to be terribly in hurry, you know. I used to had to walk from dining hall in a monastery in New Zealand where I was to my kuti. It was quite far. It was maybe about 20-minute walk, and from time to time I caught myself to be terribly in hurry, you know, to be in the kuti as quickly as possible so that I could do sitting, you know. I could do formal meditation, and this is complete nonsense, right? Because you don't have to hurry anywhere. You just have to always start whenever you remember at this moment, no matter what you are doing, right? So I know this, but still from time to time I catch my mind to basically follow the old patterns. So that is why also a few things I discovered in my own practice which nobody told me about and which I had to correct in my own practice. I discovered that I need to keep repeating it to my mind again and again. You know, so I do before every sitting. Basically, I remind myself certain basic principles. So repetition is good, and hearing the same correct thing again and again is also good. I also recommend, and that also was a discovery. It's very useful and helpful and most effective to start basically every formal meditation as if you were a beginner, you know, from beginning. I cannot explain exactly why, but it's a really good idea. You know, beginner's mind. You know, it's this one idea. I think it's from Mahayana is actually correct and useful. Not everything in that lineage is correct, but this one is, I think, useful. Beginner's mind. So I recommend, even though I noticed some of you practiced with Goenka and various other teachers. I'm not saying that what they are teaching is wrong, but it's really most effective if you could kind of start now as beginners, all of you. I'm still beginner, you know. I also try to start every sitting as beginner. So that's a kind of introduction. Any question? about myself? What you would like to know?
What was your occupation before you became a monk?
I was looking for what I should do with my life for a long time, since about 11, and I tried many fields. When I was 12, I fell in love with astronomy, so I followed that path for about 6 years. Then I gave that up. I did 5 years training in classical guitar. Then I abandoned that. I did psychology for 2 years, and once I started meditating, I gave up psychology, and I worked as journalist and publishing house editor for 6 years before becoming monk. So now I am professional meditator. I think that is why the Buddha started monastic order. You know, all monks and nuns at the Buddha's time were like meditation professionals, and I consider myself meditation professional. And I think that all monastics should be like that, but there is no problem if some of them decide to be like scholars. You know, I know monks who made PhDs in Buddhist studies, you know, universities, and also in traditional Theravada countries, many monks are like village priests. In Burma, many of them were teaching village children, you know, like primary school, basically. And in Sri Lanka, they make you know, this like religion, local religion, maintaining it. Sometimes meditation professionals tend to look down at such colleagues, monastic colleagues. But I understood that without them, actually, we would not be here either, because they helped to maintain this Buddhist culture, you know. Like in Sri Lanka, there would probably be no Theravada without this work of religious work of these temple monks, because Christians would take over there. And similarly in Burma and Thailand. So I am actually quite grateful to temple monks in Sri Lanka and anywhere else. And when I was traveling there, I had to sometimes stay in temples, like on the way, and they don't learn to keep the monastic rules and so on, but most of them are quite welcoming, and when they learn that I do keep rules, they try to make it like easy for me, you know. So they even arrange someone to come in the morning to offer food and so on because of me. So I'm quite favorable towards them. So that's my profession now. Meditation for the last 24 years. I haven't done much teaching yet. I used to teach like Peter here before I became monk. I did teach 4-day retreats for beginners in Czechia in late 90s. And as a monk, I only did teach one 9-day retreat or 8-day retreat in New Zealand about 4 years ago. So some experience. I also studied teaching actually at university. I have master's degree in teaching mathematics and physics. So I could have become IT also after I did away with psychology, but I decided I didn't want to spend my life in front of a computer. But anyway, it's fun, yeah, you know. It's fun. So now I did this animation recently, which I am going to show you, because nowadays at the Buddha's time everything had to be conveyed through words. You know, I did this little talk this week or last week about how words work, how they can lead in meditation. And that was the only means that at the Buddha's time meditators or practitioners had. You know, they even didn't have anything written down. So any knowledge could have been learned only from hearing someone talking. Words, even news. You know, news what happened in the neighboring city. You had to meet someone and talk to someone to learn about it. It's quite interesting to reflect how completely different situation that was. And also to learn anything about Buddha's teachings, you had to meet someone. You had to meet either Buddha or one of his knowledgeable disciples, and you had to listen to talk. No other way. Nowadays we can read books, and I realize that I can actually use like visual clues, you know. So I think it's all right to make use, some limited use of it, as long as we have such an opportunity. It will not last long, I think. So I thought, what is the time? I have to keep
7:30.
I will pull out my clock. And okay. Yeah. So I thought I would give like a little initial talk about gradual training. I'm sure you have heard about it before. I think I used to speak about it several times already. And I think it's important to keep this teaching in mind, because what we are doing here is going a little bit against gradual training. This was also a little piece of knowledge which nobody told me about, and which I had to realize for myself, that actually the tradition as it developed, especially in Burma, somehow they lost sight of gradual training, maybe 50 years ago or 70 years ago. So this tradition that they started in 50s, in last century, Mahasi Sayadaw and so on, building retreat centers for lay people and so on, that goes basically against this gradual training. Because yeah, it's basically jumping too fast into formal meditation. So now I would like to briefly state what the Buddha was teaching. You know, this gradual training. First step is in suttas is ordination. You know, practitioner becomes a monk or nun. Now, I think it can be approximated by lay practitioners through the practice of giving, because what we do as monastics, before we become monastics, we give away everything, and that fulfills basically the practice of giving. Right? We give away everything, so we don't have much more to give. So in that way we fulfill giving. Lay practitioners, if they are not in the situation that they can become full-time meditators, can train this ability to give away through giving whatever they can, you know, within lay life. This is like first step. It's because the whole practice of the Dhamma is about abandoning, relinquishing, and all of that. You know, in meditation, when you close eyes and maybe try to focus on breath, you are basically giving up all the other objects of awareness, of attention. And this is giving away or relinquishing on a very subtle level. So it's much easier to practice this tendency of the mind to relinquish or abandon on this very coarse level of giving away basically material things. You know, it's easier, right? But to convince oneself to actually do it. I don't have experience with how this practice, it's one of the three pillars of Dhamma practice, Dana, Sila, Bhavana. By the way, I will be using these Pali terms. Maybe first 3 days I will try to also say the English translation, but after 3 days I will probably switch and will be just using some of these basic Pali terms like Dana, Sila, Bhavana, and also 5 faculties, Saddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. So pay attention to it, because after 3 days you will have to make use of these terms. It's really good to learn some basic terms. You don't have to learn Pali. I also don't know Pali that much, but yeah, it's better to rely in one's own practice on original terms. because no matter how carefully you choose terms to translate these Pali words, it's never exactly what is meant, you know. So, as I explained in my talk on Thursday, the words can be misleading, and if you just rely on translations and so on, you have to be cautious and be aware of the fact that if you just take these translations too literally, you can waste lots of time. You can look in the wrong direction. So that was a little digression about terminology. So these three basic pillars, dana, sila, bhavana, giving, virtue and cultivation. So dana is really important, and unfortunately it looks like, especially in the West, people or practitioners underestimate it, and they think they put lots of importance on formal meditation even, not just cultivation, but just formal meditation, and then maybe sometimes keeping 5 precepts, but this giving is not very popular, it seems. Is it correct here also? I don't know how many of you had chance to spend time at Theravada countries in Asia. It's kind of extreme contrast, you know, when you compare how incredibly ingrained the practice of giving is in those cultures, and how foreign it seems to be, maybe mostly in formal Eastern European countries, I think. In the West, it's a little better, I think. But anyway, it's really very important to keep practicing this pillar of Dhamma practice as well. And it's the reason is as I said. Besides that, also of course you accumulate good karma, a lot of potential, karmic potential, and it's also difficult to explain how much boost to the practice it is when one becomes like monastic and gives away everything. You know, it's completely different meditation suddenly. It's not easy to explain it rationally, but it is noticeable. I remember I managed to acquire apartment in Prague, you know, before I became monk, and once I managed to transfer this ownership onto my mother, I could see straight away really extreme difference in meditation. It's very difficult to explain, you know, but it is so. So anyway, if lay practitioners are not in the situation to become really like monastics and give away everything, then at least giving regularly to charities or whatever is really recommendable. And also if you happen to have a monastic nearby, it's a really good practice to maybe sometimes donate food or something, you know. Yeah, it's part of this practice, and without that no monastics would be in existence nowadays if this was not being practiced for those 25 centuries. So so this is the first step, becoming a monastic, or at least practicing sufficiently enough practice of giving up material possessions. No, so once a practitioner becomes monastic, turning away from all the possessions, but also from careers, and I had to part with my girlfriend, which was the most difficult step, I must say, and so on. So you know, by becoming monastic, it's a lot. It's a huge step. So yeah. So once become monastics, then there is this 5 years of monastic training, and if you read Buddha's teachings about it, mostly in Samanyaphala Sutta, second sutta in Digha Nikaya. Basically, this second step, purification of virtue, is really a long section of that sutta. Yeah, like long. One tends to skip it, you know. But this I think shows again how important it is. If Buddha just say, you know, purify virtue and immediately went to describe the higher stages, then people would overlook it. This is a case in Burmese tradition. I don't know if you know, like Mahasi Sayadaw, the founder of this movement, meditation movement among lay people. He wrote a book, I think it's called Progress of Insight, and I remember he has just one sentence about this. You know, he says the purification virtue, even for monastics, is important, and that's it. And then he goes on to describe higher stages of insight and all of that. You know, so yeah, it is important, but you need to keep talking about it longer time. So, and that is why also in Mahasi tradition, basically, you will not find a monk who keeps the Vinaya pure. You know. All of them handle money and things like that. And then they are surprised, some of them are surprised by the practice doesn't bring the fruits that are expected, you know. So yeah, so it's very important. I also didn't understand this very well, and when I became monk, I gave away the funds I had with me to a attendant who in Burma who managed funds for monks, but I thought, and for 2 years I was there, so I didn't need to have anything to do with money and so on, but at that time I didn't understand the importance of it, so I thought once I leave that I would make some limited use of money, maybe for traveling and so on. But two Western monks persuaded me to at least try to do it without money, which I did. And then only when I tried and when I observed monks in Sri Lanka in buses, you know, pulling out wallets and banknotes, paying, I understood why it was important. So this is one of the most important rules for monastic, to keep not handling money, and it liberates the mind incredibly, and the heart also.
So what will you do if you inherit something?
Huh?
What will you do if you inherit something?
Inherit, Yeah, I could give it like to my brother and sister.
Oh.
That's what I would do, and normally what monks at the Buddha's time, also monastics at the Buddha's time, also did. Mostly, if they gave up possessions, they gave it to their parents or family members. Most of it. Yeah, I could still inherit, but most of it was already transferred to my brother. You know. Yeah, and again, one has to practice it really, like refrain from handling money for a few years before one can start seeing how it liberates the heart, you know, how light the heart feels without this constant concern about finances, you know. So purification of virtue. For lay practitioners, of course, it's really important to keep at least five precepts. I would also recommend once a week to adopt, you know, 3 more precepts, if possible. So 8 precepts, and we practice this purification of virtue by saying no when we feel like acting against those 5 precepts. You know, so. Taking them, like going through this ceremony of undertaking 5 precepts, as is traditional, is also helpful. But the main practice is to say no whenever urge arises to break, you know, to act against those 5 precepts. So that's purification of virtue. And then there are, I think, 3 more steps before actually formal meditation, what the Buddha was teaching. So one of those steps is sense restraint. So for some time even before formal meditation, one should become more aware of where one places attention. So I think it's mostly with looking at objects of desire, you know. So again, saying no to tendency to look somewhere where you know that you want to look there because of sensual desire, right? So you just say no to it and don't look there. And this is about all 6 senses actually. So listening, I think listening is quite okay. Not much not much wrong that can go from there. I think listening to music from time to time is okay, but maybe not to overdo it, basically. You know, like 1 hour a day should be okay, 1 hour and a half, but I would discourage, for instance, from playing music and doing something else, you know, like some people do. I think that's not a good idea. It teaches like split of attention. That's not helpful in meditation. So this would be sensory restraint, I think, in this area of listening. And smelling, tasting. Yeah, before eating, one should reflect why one is eating, what he or she is about to eat, and to be at least aware whether it is mostly because of taste or whether it is just to maintain one's body. Some foods are clearly just sensual enjoyment, right? Like sweets. So you don't need sugar. Body doesn't need sugar. So yeah, so this, and I don't know about smell because I never indulged in that, so I don't have experience. I know I was also briefly married before, and my wife was reading all these fashion magazines, and she was getting these special, you know, like bottles with perfumes or something. I don't know. So I guess ladies are more into this kind of thing. So yeah, restraint as far as smells is also a good idea.
What about drinking caffeinated coffee on this retreat? Because there is one available.
Yeah, I think that's good. I learned this from Ajahn Brahm. You know, I didn't drink coffee until I was 48. But I was surprised when I was at Bodhinyana in Australia. That was in 2008, so that was when I was 43. So I was surprised that Ajahn Brahm and monks there use these kind of external means for wakefulness. You know, I thought till then I had thought that it was that one should be able to deal with sleepiness through internal means, you know, like meditation and effort and so on. But they were using coffee and other means. So later, when I was 3 years later, I decided to test it out. You know how it would work. So at that time, when I was coffee beginner, it was just enough, like half teaspoon of Nescafe, and right after that my meditation was really good. For half an hour, lots of energy and so on. So since then I have been drinking coffee, and I think it's okay. It's harmless, I think. And just 2-3 cups a day, I think, is even some people say is good for health. So I think it's okay. And tea also. So that was taste, touches, and also thoughts. You know, what you are thinking about. I remember before, in the mid-90s, when I went for this first intense retreat in Mahasi Center in Yangon, I was kind of curious about how I would be able to abstain, you know, from sexual activity for so long. But I discovered that actually it's not difficult if you don't indulge, you know, in these sensual things. That means if you don't look at, or at least me, if I don't look at women, girls, and if I don't indulge or allow sexual fantasies to go on, then it's not problem, you know, to live celibate life. So controlling what one is thinking about, and if something connected with sensuality arises in the mind, to stop it right away. It's really even good for mental health, you know. So this kind of sense restraint in all the 6 senses is one of the steps before one comes to formal meditation, like intense meditation. Then there is clear awareness of how one is using life's requisites. So that's food, also clothing, you know, not to be too much like into this fashion, luxurious stuff, and shelter, houses, and medicines, not to abuse medicines, drugs, and so on. So this is like a clear awareness of how you use these 4 requisites for survival, basically. We need food, we need clothing, we need shelter, and sometimes we need medicines. And also before, actually, formal meditation, Buddha was teaching mindfulness in daily activities, what we call in this way. So it's kind of interesting. My experience is that this is basically taught as if it was coming after formal meditation, after retreat. But it should actually come before. And now I came to believe that if people experience like difficulties in sitting meditation, you know, lots of suffering, and it doesn't feel like natural and pleasant, I think it is because they went to formal meditation too early. You know, that they first need to really hone this ability to be present in daily activities. So this practice is basically during the day, no matter what you are doing, whenever you remember, I should be present, and from that point you can practice this quality of presence. Presence means clear awareness of what you are doing in the present moment and being fully with it, you know, which means not doing something and thinking about something else. It was, as I mentioned on Thursday, was really difficult, and still a little bit is, for me to maintain presence or clear awareness of what I am doing while I am walking. Because I used to walk a lot as a child, because my mother was teacher and she wanted to have to know what we are doing in school, so I had to attend school on the other side of the town where my mother was teaching, also my brother and sister as well, you know. So we had to walk every day 3 kilometers across the whole town and back. So I did a lot of walking, and I developed this habit of thinking. So this movement of legs immediately starts like pushing thoughts, you know. So it was very difficult for me to learn to be actually quiet while walking, you know, quiet and be fully with that process of walking. So I think it's good for you to be aware of it, that when we are going to do this meditation schedule here, formal sitting and formal walking meditation, that it's good, it's important, but what you are doing outside of formal meditation is as important, maybe still slightly more important actually than formal meditation. So I suggest that, for instance, if you experience lots of suffering in sitting, you know, while sitting with closed eyes, and lots of it doesn't feel right, you know. So I think you might try to check first why it is and what kind of defilement it is, and maybe work with it through meditation. But if you simply don't know what is going on, then it's all right to open eyes, you know, and try to, for instance, meditate a little bit for some time with opened eyes, just to maintain presence. I do that, and I noticed also, for instance, Ajahn Sucitto is also sometimes meditating with open eyes. Do you know Ajahn Sucitto? He has about twice as many years as monastic as me, and he still is doing that. And there is nothing wrong with that, you know, like meditating while looking, just sitting, maybe even stop conceiving or perceiving it as formal meditation. You know, you sometimes sit somewhere, right? So same like sitting and just maintaining presence. Kind of meditating without meditation. Yeah, that's one of the tricks I learned not so long ago, practicing non-meditation. You know, when meditation doesn't work, you just stop meditating. No meditation now, but don't do anything else. You know, just no meditation, but nothing else.
Just open eyes and be aware.
Yeah, but be quiet. You know, if thoughts starts rising, just be aware of those thoughts, but not to get lost in thinking about something. Just like that. So no meditation, but nothing else. And if you maintain it, actually, you know, even through that you can get quite far. And once you feel better about, you can just again close the eyes and try to do meditation. Sort of. Or maybe not, maybe just close eyes and keep non-meditating. You know. Yeah, that's what I needed, because I learned through not so skillful instruction. I learned many unskillful habits in meditation. So the only way, basically, after this long time, like 15 years of monastic life, the only way to not to keep falling back into those old habits, the only way was to practice non-meditation, which means you stop defining what you are doing as meditation.
Mam pytanie, Piotrek, Ciebie poproszę o pomoc, bo nie wiem jak to powiedzieć. O ospałość, jak sobie z tym radzić, czyli mamy zamknięte oczy i nie wiemy, czy to medytacja, czy sen. To otwieranie oczu może pomóc. Czy są jakieś inne triki, sposoby na to?
He asked about tiredness in meditation, that he can fall asleep when he closes his eyes.
Yeah, in that case, I think also open eyes can help, right? And I will talk about it later, about 5 hindrances. Yeah, we have these 5 qualities of the mind which we cultivate in also in formal meditation, but also basically at any time. But we also have 5 hindrances, 5 common obstacles in cultivation, and one of them is sleepiness or tiredness, right? I have, older you get, more of it you get this, you know, this tiredness, lack of energy. So the trick that helps to me is simply to get up and meditate in standing posture. So that's what I recommend here also. Whenever you start falling like asleep in sitting meditation, you may try first to overcome it in different way, like through inner means, you know. So one of them is basically to try to catch this feeling of sleepiness coming in as soon as possible, you know. So to take this sense of like mind sinking into sleepiness, to take that as meditation object. So you just watch this sinking feeling in the heart into sleepiness. If you catch it quickly enough, it usually goes away, but it keeps coming back, you know. Now, what I also realized that these brief like knots are not problem, because if you notice in between them you are aware, you know, you are not sleepy. It's only always brief moment, and mind comes out of it, you know. So that's not a big problem. You just use these periods between them for meditation, and you know these knots are okay. But if internal means don't help, which can happen quite often, so then I usually get up, and how you stand is important. I didn't know. I learned this from my yoga teacher. 1 year before I became monk, I attended yoga lessons with one American New Yorker, and she was also studying Qigong. So this is from Qigong. First of all, one should not, you know, how do you say this?
Sit on the knees.
Huh?
stiffen the knees.
Yeah,
Allow
it
the
should
knees.
not go like the knees too much, you know, just slightly bent. No, it's still like straight, but it's not too much like this. Okay. And also it's important feet should be parallel and they should be about this wide apart. You know. So normally people are used to stand like this, something like this, like, and this is no good. Even though it feels more natural at first, but because of this the lower back hurts and it simply doesn't work very well. So in this way, I was never able to stand for a long time. On my first retreat, I tried, I think, standing meditation only once, and I thought it was even more torture than sitting. So I didn't do it much, but once I learned this from this teacher, I actually find it completely comfortable, and I can do like 30 minutes without problem, standing with a slightly kind of bent knees and with the feet. But you have to check it with your eyes, because if you just rely on sensations, you will be deceived. You really have to, at first, before you become used to it, you have to check your feet, whether they are parallel and whether they are sort of like this wide apart. And then you need to accept the feeling of unnaturalness, because it feels unnatural at first. To me, it doesn't now anymore. But before you change this bodily ingrained habit, you really need to check with your eyes. And then like this, and this works for sleepiness. If you should keep falling asleep even while standing, then it's probably better to lay down and take a nap. Or maybe strong cup of coffee. Yeah, so we I mentioned these first 5 steps before actually formal meditation, which I think is good to keep in mind, even if we are going to practice mostly formal meditation here. At least if you notice some unusual level of obstacles in formal meditation, then you know that it's probably you need to go back to those steps before, right? You understand? So these first steps are like practice of giving. If you do enough of practice of giving, this reduces, as an effect of it, it reduces problems in formal meditation. Then purification of virtue, of course, doing bad karma effects must have effect on meditation. You know, it just cannot be cannot remain without effect. So refraining from wrongdoing, and then sense restraint, wise use of requisites of life, and mostly like presence in daily activities. That's what I also do to my mind when I finish formal meditation. I remind myself cultivation doesn't end here. You know, you need to keep to maintain this quality of presence going without time limit. And then after these 5 steps, Buddha says that once a monastic monk or nun fulfilled these 5 steps, then he or she resorts to secluded place, to cave or foot of a tree, sits down cross-legged, and establishes mindfulness in front of him. It's called in front of him, which means in the present moment. And then what comes next is purification of mind from these 5 hindrances, which I mentioned. One of them is sleepiness. So that's another step, and then it goes on like jhanas and stages of enlightenment, psychic powers, and so on. So yeah, so I think this is enough for introduction. Any questions? So we will have also individual interviews. You know, not tomorrow, but Tuesday. Every one of you will have opportunity to meet with me and twice during this retreat and to discuss, you know, personal problems or whatever. So I will mention it on Wednesday. I think we will start Wednesday, Thursday, and then Saturday and Sunday. One interview takes about 10 minutes, yeah, I will say more about it later. But there are many levels of at which one can teach the Dhamma, and one of them is giving talk to audience. So in that case, one can only give instructions which are generally applicable to more or less everyone. But then the other level is individual instructions, where one can try to find something specific for that person, you know, at that moment. It's called individual timely instruction. Skillful teachers know that some instructions should be given only at the right time, and also some instructions are helpful only to one person and not necessarily to others. You know, so that's what is not actually recorded. You know, we can read in the suttas that monks, Buddha, and other enlightened disciples of his were giving individual teachings, but it's only mentioned that they were doing it, but it's not said what they were teaching, right? Because these kind of instructions cannot be recorded. They could, but sometimes even if meditators learn some correct things too early, it can be again counterproductive. It can serve as hindrance. So, for example, if people know too much about jhanas, about nimittas and states of bliss and so on, that can be hindrance, because if you are knowing about those beautiful, blissful nimittas, then you are trying to get it, you know, in meditation. And that's exactly what we are supposed to refrain from, you know, because they have to come on their own. So, yeah. So one should not know too much details about what lies ahead in meditation, you know, too early. All right, so I think we could have like a 10 minutes break, and then we can meet for some initial guided meditation. Right? Okay. So 2020.